J'ai la parole.
Oui, vous pouvez parler, madame.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Je suis Blanche Sonon, présidente du conseil d'administration du réseau social Watch Bénin, qui est un réseau de contrôle citoyen de l'action publique au Bénin. Je remercie PNA et CDD pour cette offre de renforcement de nos capacités en matière de renforcement de réseautage, comment asseoir un bon réseau pour l'effectivité du Parlement ouvert en Afrique de l'Ouest et précisément dans mon pays, le Bénin. Je nous souhaite bons travaux. Merci.
Merci à vous aussi. Justin, est-ce que vous pouvez parler maintenant?
Oui, bonjour.
Bonjour.
Je suis Justin Abalo Badialewa. Je suis juriste, je viens du Togo, du CACIT, collectif des associations contre l'impunité au Togo. Je suis le coordinateur du programme régional Afrique du CACIT. Je suis également le coordinateur du réseau des organisations de la société civile pour l'ouverture parlementaire au Togo.
D'accord, merci beaucoup. J'ai vu aussi Monsieur Segoba, notre partenaire en Côte d'Ivoire, oui. Monsieur Segoba, est-ce que vous êtes là? Ok, je pense qu'il est un peu... Thank you very much. I think that Mrs. Segoba is a little occupied, and so I think we can just dive into the discussion. I'd say that the rest of us can use the chat box to introduce ourselves. So you mention your name, your organization, and then your country that you're coming from. So next on our agenda is the opening remarks, and that will be given by me. As I had already said, my name is Cynthia. I am the Senior Programs Officer here at Parliamentary Network Africa. And once again, on behalf of PN Africa, I would like to introduce, welcome all of you to today's event. The theme for today's training is strategies for building effective networks. And this is one of a series of parliamentary trainings that PN Africa will be organizing in the course of the year. The aim of these trainings is to build the capacity of network members on promoting open parliament. It is also a platform for networks to share experiences and best practices towards promoting parliamentary openness in our national parliaments as well as our regional parliaments. During the course of this presentation, members are encouraged to introduce themselves using the chat box, as I've already said. If you have any questions or any comments to make, please use the chat box as well. But there'll be an opportunity for all of us to speak. I mean, you raise your hands using the indicators down there. So you raise your hands and then they'll call you to speak whenever you actually indicate so. I would also want us to tweet at us, PN Africa at PN Africa Watch on Twitter. Also on Facebook, we are Parliamentary Network Africa. So Facebook, LinkedIn, and other social media handles, we are Parliamentary Network Africa. So yes, we are using the hashtag for today's event as Open Parliament. So hashtag Open Parliament, hashtag Open West Africa. So whenever you're actually uploading anything concerning today's event, don't forget to use these hashtags. And please do well to share something on social media for having participated in today's event. So once again, thank you for joining, and I wish all of us a fruitful deliberation. Thank you very much. I think I'm also the moderator, so I would call on our next, our presenter in the person of Ben Ayet to give us the presentation for today. And so Ben, I think, yeah, over to you.
Thank you very much, Cynthia.
L'interprétation ne marche pas. Hein? Vous pouvez vérifier ça?
Oui, donc est-ce que vous avez cliqué sur l'interprétation et vous avez sélectionné français?
Oui, oui, on a fait ça au départ, ça marchait, mais depuis que vous parlez, là, ça ne marche pas. Oui.
Peut-être je n'ai pas plus, sauf, donc je vais faire ça et vous parler un peu.
Okay, so Cynthia, thank you very much for the introduction. And can you please give me the right to share my screen?
Yeah, I think you already have that permission. You are the co-host, so you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, can you see my screen, please?
Yes, please, we can see your screen.
Okay.
Yeah, oui, oui, c'est bon.
Can you still see it?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
But before you continue, let me ask if the French participants can hear us. Monsieur Justin, est-ce que vous écoutez en français?
Oui, 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 on vous écoute.
Oui,
Bonsoir.
oui, nous vous
En
écoutons.
français?
C'est bon depuis un certain temps, mais tout ce que Cynthia a développé avant, on n'a pas.
Oh, c'est ça que... Oh, d'accord.
Bon, maintenant.
Ok, désolé. Okay, so Ben, I think you should go slowly because I think I spoke too fast. And so we weren't able to capture most of the things I said. So the presentation shouldn't be that fast, please.
Okay, thank you very much. That's well noted. And so good afternoon to you all once again. And I believe everyone can clearly hear me and see my screen. Please, if you can't hear me, just type it in the chat box, or you can just indicate it so that I can position it properly. So just as my colleague Cynthia indicated, that today's meeting is part of a series of trainings or a series of webinars that we intend to provide to help strengthen network building across Africa, help strengthen network building across the various countries we find ourselves, so that we are able to effectively engage with our parliaments, we are able to coordinate ourselves well, and we're able to see the results that we look forward to out of the activities and the initiatives that we implement. And so this is why we are meeting here. And for this purpose, we are going to look at the strategies for building effective networks. And so what I'll be doing today is to quickly give an idea of some of the reasons why we need networks. Why do we even have to form alliances? Why do we have to bring or put ourselves together as a community? towards a common goal or towards achieving any specific purpose. We would also look at some categories of networks, which of course we would find ourselves in there. We'll look at a couple of challenges that networks are facing, or a couple of challenges that you can encounter when you are building a network. And then also we'll look at how we can build effective networks. And from that, we are going to look at some strategies. We are going to look at some tools that we can also leverage to run effective networks. And then finally, we'll look at, I'm sure all of us, or a lot of us, have heard about the regulatory framework that APMON, the APMON Continental Committee, Executive Committee, has been working on very tirelessly now. We'll be discussing it. We'll be discussing what we have now, and then we'll have a couple of discussions also around that regulatory framework. So that is basically what we'll be looking at in this meeting. So quickly, I just want to us to draw our minds back to, why do we even have to put ourselves together as alliances, or as networks, as coalitions, and all of that. And so for CSOs like us who work in several areas, who are interested in different areas of the economy, whether social, whether gender, whether economy or economics, whether governance, whether parliament, and all of that. It is very necessary that we pull our strengths together, because there are obstacles, there are limited resources, and even sometimes the environments that we operate in, there can be some political resistance. So in all of these things, it's usually good that we pull ourselves together. And so the statement here, as you can read, says, and this is by Helen Keller, it says, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much, which simply means that, if you are a standalone organization, if you are a single organization, of course you can achieve a lot, but that can also, when you pull yourself together with other organizations, you are also able to do even much more than what just yourself you could be able to do. So it's something that I just want us to reflect on, and also inform why we need to build a network. And then secondly, this also says that collaboration allows us to know more than we are capable of knowing by ourselves. This is by Paul Solas, right? So you'd realize that when you are part of a network, you have access to a couple of resources, you have access to a couple of opportunities, right? You get to know things that you may not have known if you were only onto yourself, or you were just in your one corner somewhere and working things out by yourself. But by virtue of you being a member of an organization or a network, so to speak, you are able to even get to know some of the things that are ongoing, right? It could be opportunities to fund, and it could be all of the other things you can think about. And we'll go through all of these as we proceed.
Okay, so your voice is a little faint, so kindly up your voice a little for us. Et pour nos participants francophones aussi, j'ai appris qu'on n'entend pas en français. Est-ce que c'est le cas?
On entend maintenant.
On entend.
D'accord, merci. Okay, please carry on.
Okay, so here we want to look at, why do we even need networks? Why do we need to come together and work together as friends for a common cause, as organizations for a common cause? First of it, we will have, because we want to build a collective action, right? For the purposes of collective action, right? And so one of the reasons why we come together as networks is because we want to collaborate with each other. We want to coordinate all the efforts that we have within a particular environment or within a particular space, because we realize that organizations have different and varied expertise, have different and varied resources, knowledge, and all of that, right? And so all of these things, when we are in a network, we are able to build or push a particular cause, right? So for instance, organizations that work in human rights can decide to come together to pursue a common cause. Organizations like us who are interested in working with Parliament or promoting open Parliament can come together to advocate for whether you want your Parliament to pass a bill on gender, or you want your Parliament to approve a particular program of government and all of that. When we belong to a network, we are able to, move as one entity. And so that is very important in network building. Again, by virtue of you joining a network, you are able to gain some visibility, right? You are able to gain some visibility because, networks are made up of strong organizations, very vocal organizations. And of course, you would have those networks who are also not very vocal, who are also not very visible. But by virtue of you being part of the network, you are able to, put yourself out there. For instance, let's just take, for instance, you want to issue a statement, media statements or anything, right? And then by virtue of you being part of the network signs onto the statement. Your organization's name is listed, right? And so you get the opportunity to put yourself out there if you are a small organization. If you are working with Parliament and you are part of the network, you get to join the network to meet, for instance, members of Parliament or meet the Speaker of Parliament, which under normal circumstance, just your organization wouldn't have had the opportunity to engage the Speaker or the Parliament. So these are some of the benefits. Again, joining a network also helps us to share knowledge, right? I indicated earlier that organizations that are members of a network have different resource materials. They have different knowledge materials. They have different, they provide a lot of services, right? And so by virtue of you being part of the network, you're able to discuss some challenges that you are facing, whether it's in implementing your project, whether it's in, trying to overcome some obstacles in your project, whether you want to conduct some research, yet you have very little or less expertise in it. By virtue of you being part of a network, you are able to, access all of these knowledge materials. You're able to, because the members will share them. And so you're also able to access all of these resources. You're able to access these knowledge materials and all of that, so that especially when it comes to duplicating efforts, we also reduce our duplication of efforts in our project implementation. And then finally, it helps or it provides a platform for advocacy, right? I'm sure a couple of us have been part of some, whether coalitions or communities that pursued or that advocated for one or two, policy changes or wanted to influence one government program or policy or the other and all of that. And I'm sure you testify to the benefits of you being part of that advocacy network where you wanted to, make an influence, you wanted to drive a particular cause, but because of your numbers, it helped to, get the results, right? The result that you wanted, right? And so that is one of the benefits in joining a network. Now, there are a lot of forms of networks that we can have, right? Depending on the objective of the network, depending on the purpose of the network and all of that. But these are a few of them. So first, depending on what you want to do, you could have an advocacy network where your purpose or your objective is to, push for policy change, push for lawmaking, push for any social cause that you believe in, and you want to see that government is acting on it, or you want to see that your government is either stopping, your government stops doing what it's not doing right. So that is what you do when you are part of an advocacy network. Again, you could be part of a network that is only interested in delivering services, right? So it could be that you are interested in going into the communities within your country or your society to, provide specific services to them. And in doing so, as a network, you would identify with some of these common things, because you realize that each organization within a network may be providing one service or the other. We also have knowledge networks. So knowledge networks are those networks where you share information, you share knowledge, and you learn from them, right? So for instance, it could be a research network. It could be a policy network. It could be those networks where you want to come together to conduct research and share the findings, and based on the findings, now you can get some results, or you can pursue some other interests, right? Again, we can also have networks to build our capacities, right? And I'm sure we can take our minds to this network, for instance, our various country networks or the African PMO network, which one of our objectives is to provide a platform for us to learn, for us to share, and for us to strengthen our capacities as a network. So that is one of the very important components of our work, and that is why we are part of this. We can also have a network of multi-stakeholders. So a network where you can have governments representing, a network where you can have CSOs representing, a network where you can have even private organizations representing. These networks, you may want to, for instance, if it's OGP, you may want to be pursuing an agenda of open government partnership or open parliament, where you may, for instance, have the open parliament committee, or your country's open government partnership committee, and all of that. You realize that some of these committees may have private sector represented, may have CSOs represented, and may also have government representatives on it, right? So some of these networks can be built towards such causes. Now, I just want to ask this question so that we can reflect, or this statement for us to reflect, right? A network can be most difficult to build, yet it is the most easiest to break. Just think about it. Do you agree with this statement? Do you think, indeed, anyone who wants to build a network can easily build a network? Or you think building a network is most difficult, but then after struggling to build a network, after going through all the stages to build a network, if you don't take care, it can easily break. Do you agree with this statement? Just reflect on the statement.
Allô? Est-ce que vous pouvez reprendre un peu la question là?
Someone speaking?
Oui. Est-ce que vous pouvez faire votre commentaire dans la boîte en bas là?
Can I proceed?
Yes, please, you may.
Okay, thank you. So while we look forward to building networks, while we look forward to forming alliances and all of that, there are a couple of challenges that we may encounter, which we must be aware of, right? even as we look forward to strengthening our local country networks, our Benin networks of PMOs,
So they want you to retake the question. Some didn't hear it, so yes. They want you to. Can you ask the question again? A network can be the most difficult to build, yet it is the most easiest to break. I think I have restated it. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, so I just wanted us to reflect on, is it a statement that we agree to, that indeed building networks or forming networks, alliances, are one of the most difficult things you may want to do or you may consider doing, but it's also one of the most easiest to break. Do you just reflect on them? Do you agree with them? Do you agree with this statement, or you don't agree? Do you agree that networks can easily break even after years of struggling to build them, after years of struggling to strengthen and all of that? Just something little and then it breaks up. So I just want us to reflect on the statement. It's not really a question, but just to reflect. I'm sure in our discussions, we may share some ideas or share some thoughts on it as well. Okay, so as I was saying, while in our effort to build networks, in our effort to put ourselves together as communities or as alliances, there are a couple of challenges that we have to be aware of, or we may need to anticipate, right? And so one of them, and these are very common challenges that a lot of networks face, and so we have to be aware of them. One of them is the lack of resources, right? So organizations that belong to a network may have limited resources. And so usually for such organizations, they may not be able to participate fully in the activities of the network, right? Because perhaps we want to contribute, we want to donate and all of that and support certain activities. And these members of the network who do not have the means or who do not have the funding, right, they may not contribute. And sometimes it may prevent them from actively participating, right? So this is one of the challenges that can break a network if members do not have enough resources to support the network. It may break up. Again, there is also the challenge of competition among organizations, right? So for some networks, I don't want to say a lot of networks, for some networks, you realize that members see themselves as competitors instead of collaborators. And this can be very dangerous for the health of any network. When members of the networks begin seeing themselves as competitors instead of them seeing themselves as partners in building or achieving a common goal and all of that, can be very dangerous, right? And so there's always the need that we understand that as a network, we are in to achieve a common goal. We are in to pursue a common cause. And what is this cause? This is the particular cause that we have signed on to. And so no matter the differences, no matter the interest that we have, we need to see ourselves as working together so that we can always, be sharing ideas. We can always be contributing to the success of the network, right? Whether it's the goals that we are setting, whether it's the initiatives that we are setting and all of that. Because of course, each organization has their own values, right? My value as an organization may not be the same or even similar to your goals or your values as an organization. And sometimes because of these differences, we may be tempted to see ourselves as enemies or as competitors instead of collaborators. Again, also, there is the issue of members resisting change, right? So for networks or for organizations who have decided to come together, right, we all come from different backgrounds. We all have our own culture. We all have our organizational culture. We have our values. We have our vision, our mission. We know what we want to do. We know what we want to achieve, right? And so when we come together and now we have to adapt to a particular course of action. We have to adapt to a particular way of doing things for the network. Sometimes it becomes very difficult because we know we are used to the old ways of doing things in our own organizations. So why do we join a network and now we have to do it this way and not our way? These are some of the changes that joining a network can bring about, right? And usually you'll find that members resist some of these changes because they may not be used to the change that you are introducing, whether it's an improvement from an old thing or anything at all. They may not, be very familiar with those changes. It could be procedures, it could be practices, it could be activities, right? It could even relate to administration, right? Because in my organization, I have a way of running my operations or my administration, my projects. I also feel that that is the same way we should be doing here. And if we are not doing the same thing, then it becomes a challenge, right? Again, also, one of the very difficult challenges or very, very big challenges you can have as a network is managing the expectations of members, right? And it falls in line with what I've been saying, that members come to a network with different values, with different goals and all of that. Members have their own understanding of what success should be by virtue of what they joining the network. They have an idea of the benefits they want to get from the network, right? And all of these expectations, if you don't manage them well, if you don't see how you can, massage them, right, it becomes very difficult to pull on board all individual members within the network. And so it's very, very essential that we ensure that each member within the network is satisfied and each member within the network is participating effectively. And some of these things prevent conflicts, really, right? So it's very good that we manage the expectations of network members. So now we've been able to identify the challenges of joining a network. We know what we can encounter as members of a network or as coordinators of a network, as conveners of a network. So how do we now start to build an effective network? And how do we overcome some of these challenges as conveners or as coordinators of networks, right? Let's look at just a couple of them. So first, one of the things we need to do is to identify our shared values and goals. That is the most important thing. That is the first thing we need to agree on as a network. We need to identify what we want to achieve, why we are even coming together, what is the reason, what is the purpose, and what would be our vision, right? What would be our values, right? What would be our goals? When we're able to clarify all of these things, then it makes it very easy for everyone to understand what we are doing or what we are up to, right? So if, for instance, we are focusing on promoting open parliament, we know that our goal is to promote transparency, to promote civic participation, to ensure that there is accountability in parliament. That is our objective, right? And so in doing this, we want to engage with parliament, we want to engage with MPs and staff of parliament and even CSOs to see how we can achieve this goal. From the onset, the goal has been set clearly, the objectives have been set, so everyone has an idea of what we want to achieve. In that sense, you clear any doubts, and so you're able to move forward as one entity. Again, there is also the need for us to find some common grounds and build trust. It's very necessary, right? If organizations are going to work together effectively, if we are going to depend on each other and leverage on our strengths, even our weaknesses, and support ourselves, it means that we can find ourselves on a common ground. It means that we built some trust. And so one of the first things we need to be doing is to ensure that we build trust. And how do we build trust? We build trust through honest communication. We need to communicate whatever it is, whatever steps, whatever action that we are taking. We need to share them with members, whether it's ideas, whether it's opinions, whether it's experiences. And sometimes when it comes to sharing ideas and opinions, no matter what it is, no matter the differences, no matter the different values that we may have, we need to find a common ground. We need to compromise. We need to ensure that we have arrived on a particular course or objective to push forward, right? And that is something that we need to be very mindful of, and is very, very essential to ensuring an effective and successful partnership. Again, we also need to create a shared identity. What really does this mean? It means that as a network, we have to be known for something, right? Members of the network must have a sense, a collective sense, right? What's our sense of purpose? What's our sense of vision, right? What is the common goal that we are driving, right? We should all identify ourselves as one, so that if we are pushing for open parliament, one organization would not go on a different platform and then prefer a different objective or a different goal that is not same as what we are pushing, right? So we have to create a shared identity, and some of these identities could even come from some of, the way we meet. It could be from, to some extent, your colors, to some extent, your communication strategy, to some extent, your branding, and all of that, right? And so if we share in this identity, as for instance, the CSO's network of Togo working with Parliament, then we all know that we belong to this network, right? And we are pushing a common agenda. Now also, there is the need for us to share resources and information, right? And you would realize that all that I'm saying kind of link or they link themselves, right? So sharing information, sharing resources is very, very critical and is very, very important, right? So as a network, it's not an individual affair. It's not about a single organization. It's about the common good. It's about everyone. So whether it's about information sharing, whatever it is, you need to share for members to know what is going on. If it's resources, you need to share for members to have access to them, right? It could even be access to funding. It could be access to opportunities, right? It could be initiative, ideas, recommendations, right? You found some opportunity somewhere and you want to share it to the network members so that other members can also participate or benefit from them. These are opportunities that we can share with our network, and it helps to improve the coordination. It helps to improve the communication and the relationship between members. Again, I'll quickly go through this so that we can move on to the other things. It is also important to have an effective secretariat, or if you like, coordination unit, right? So one of the things that we have realized from our experience, PN Africa, from our experience, is that when you have a committed secretariat, when you have a dedicated secretariat or a unit that coordinates the network, it helps the network to get the attention that it deserves. It helps the network to get the necessary, input from whoever is going to coordinate it, rather than say, well, we are all committees because we have a committee, we have a steering committee, so that is enough. We want to, go ahead with it. It's always good that in the end, there is that unit or that secretariat that we can hold accountable, whether they are doing something right or they are doing something wrong. We can always fall on them to provide information on how we are doing, and we can always trust that they will have their eyes on the network and ensuring that activities are going on and are being implemented. Again, also as members of the network, we need to leverage on the expertise that we have. I think I really don't need to explain much. As we all know, being part of the network, it means that we will have access to the rich experience. A network is like a repository of different skills, different expertise, different resources from different organizations. You could have organizations who are doing well in advocacy. You can have organizations who are doing well in research. You can have organizations who are doing very well at the grassroots. And so you get to benefit from some of these experiences. For instance, you are conducting a research and you don't have that expertise. You don't have the top-notch expertise. You have the access to some of these organizations who have already cut their teeth and who already have the skills and the expertise to support your work, right? And so all you need to do is to bring it to their attention, and they'll help you to conduct the kind of research that you want to conduct, right? Rather than you being on your own and you trying to achieve all of these things. Again, also, we need to find partners and collaborators. So in our work, we always must be looking out for people or organizations, whether donors, whether local partners, whether NGOs who are interested in our work and who want to support our work, right? And also, we should even be looking out for more members who are interested in joining and also, joining the network to share or to pursue the same cause that we are also pursuing. Again, we also need to be open for ideas and approaches. As a network, it's not about just, for instance, just the coordinating unit. It's not just about the secretariat. It's not just about the ideas of the steering committee. It's about the ideas of all members of the network. It's about the ideas of whoever is part of the network, whoever is a member of the network. And so you have to be open to some of the approaches. You have to be open to some of the new ideas that will come from the members of the network, right? And by so doing, it means that you are accommodating. By so doing, it means that you are open to receive from members and not only your ideas. And then finally, it is very, very important for us to build internal mechanisms to manage and resolve conflicts. I mean, we cannot underrate or underestimate conflicts within networks. It is bound to happen. Once we are all not thinking the same way, we all don't have same values, we have different values, we have different organizational culture, we have different goals and all of that, there is bound to be conflicts. And so how do we resolve these conflicts? How do we bring partners who may be at each other's truth? How do we bring them to the table to ensure that we discuss issues out and we settle these conflicts? We have to take a deliberate effort to build systems that will manage these conflicts, systems that will help to resolve them so that in the end, it doesn't escalate and doesn't break the networks for us. So after looking at all the things that we need to do, all the things that we could face, how or what are some of the tools that we can use as a network? What are some of the tools we can use to maintain an effective network? And I'm sure we all know these tools, but perhaps you may not be using them, right? And so you have social media available, you have Facebook, you have WhatsApp. So for instance, it could be a WhatsApp group for the network. It could be a Twitter page for the network. It could be a Facebook group or page for the network. And these social media networks helps to, pull members together, and it even attracts new members. It could even attract funders or supporters, collaborators, and all of that. Again, there are a couple of online tools that you can use to collaborate, to share resources, to communicate. Example of them, you could have Microsoft Teams, where you can sign on to have meetings, to even, send with your work colleagues or members of the network. You can always share resources and you can always see the progress of work and all of that, what others are doing and all of that. So it's something that you can also use. There is also the Slack, which is also another collaboration tool. There is also Zoom, which we are using now. And so we are meeting here today on Zoom. There is Google Space, where you can create a group, you can create a community for the network, and you can use to manage the network. You can also use your email newsletters. If you have email newsletters as a network, if you have one, you can use to reach your members, you can use to reach your partners, you can use to communicate the outcome or output, the success stories of your projects and initiatives. And then finally, you could have in-person events and meetings, right? So you could have a combination of all of them, whether in-person or virtual, but you could also consider which one is best at what time. So you need to know what you want to do. So that will be for the strategies for building an effective network. That will be for how we can manage our networks, our country networks, our regional networks, and all of that, and any other networks that we are part of. How do we manage them effectively, right? So that is what I've been able to do now. And Cynthia, if I need to pause to take any questions, please do alert me. But now we are going to look at the regulatory framework of the African PMO network. So I don't know if I have to pause here or I have to continue, Cynthia.
Okay, I think since this is on the strategies for building effective networks, I would say that we pause to take questions in relation to this theme, whilst we continue later with the regulatory framework. That is what I think. But if you think that the regulatory framework is also going to be something simple, it will be very simple, I think we can go ahead with that so that the questions are put together at the latter part.
I think it's been me speaking for a while, so we can take a few questions and then we can proceed.
OK. Donc, c'est le moment pour poser des questions et faire des commentaires. Donc, si vous avez une question à poser, veuillez lever la main et on va vous donner la parole. So if you have any questions, any comments to make, please raise your hands up and we'll give you the platform to do that. Okay, I don't see any hands up. I don't know if you can see any from your end, but I don't see any hands up. And that means that I think you can proceed. Ça veut dire qu'il n'y a pas de questions à poser, bien il n'y a pas de commentaires à faire. Donc, on va continuer. OK, Madame Blanche, sinon, à lever sa main.
Merci
Donc,
bien.
Madame,
Merci bien. Je félicite le communicateur pour le contenu de son exposé. Malheureusement que c'est une formation virtuelle, le résultat n'est pas toujours le même que si c'est en présentiel. Mais nous allons essayer de suivre. Je voudrais juste demander, parce qu'au début, ce sont les caractéristiques d'un réseau, tout et tout, mais le dernier développement a montré comment est-ce que chaque réseau peut s'organiser pour réussir. Je sais que nous sommes des organisations différentes avec nos objectifs, nos domaines et nos valeurs spécifiques à chaque structure. Mais je voudrais savoir si les réseaux qui ont déjà de l'avance sur des pays comme le Bénin ont déjà eu à élaborer leurs valeurs en lien avec notre thématique qu'est le Parlement ouvert. Et si oui, peut-être au moment de la seconde phase de débat, nous pouvons les partager ou après en ligne. Merci bien.
Madame, est-ce que vous pouvez prendre ça, monsieur l'interprète? Est-ce que vous pouvez nous aider avec ça?
On n'a rien entendu, hein?
Est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Cynthia, tu
Oui.
parles de moi ou bien de l'interprète?
L'interprète. Est-ce qu'il est là? Hello? Yes, so I've joined your interpretation. Can you hear me? Did you hear the question? Okay, so what is the main impulse? Because I got the bit about the fact that the results of having a physical meeting have been best achieved, unlike this virtual interface we are using. But I think I lost it a bit. I don't know if everybody can hear. I'd have loved everybody to hear you. So if you can click on the English, or I don't know, yeah, or the original video, audio, something, yeah. So I'll join the group.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Hey, so I can't hear him. Je n'ai pas bien compris la question, moi-même. Even though you said it in English, still don't
Cynthia,
get.
Ben, I think Cynthia, Ben,
Pardon? Maybe then one thing answer, maybe we can find out if he got it clearly, because I still don't get it, even though you said it in English.
Cynthia, if I may,
Okay.
my summary of it is that Madame Sonon, of course, thanked for the good initiative, and that she would have preferred that this was more of a physical interaction rather than Zoom. But of course, we are on Zoom. But her point was that and that's my understanding of the interpretation, for networks like Benin, who are advanced in coordinating themselves, are they getting indications on, the structures that are necessary for them to be able to better tweak their internal networks, to suit, the structures that exist, and to be able to make sure that it is in compliance with what is expected from the other places? It's like the summary I'm getting from the question. I don't know if
Okay,
from
that is clear for me. Yeah. Je pense que ça va maintenant. So Ben, can you take that question?
Yes, very well. Yes, so I think that's and in fact that is the next that we will be moving to the next topic, or the next item that we'll be discussing, which is the framework. So that would help to now even have an idea of what the goals or what the objectives of the continental network is, and whether the local network, the country network, Benin, goal and objectives fall in line with that. So yes, we'll be looking at that. We'll be discussing all of that, right? I don't know if this answers the question. Hello, Cynthia. Hello, Cynthia, can you hear me?
Ben, we can hear you. I think you can proceed.
Okay. All right, so we now want to look at the African Parliamentary Monitoring Organizations Network Regulatory Framework, which has been in the offing for some time now. I'm sure a lot of us have been in anticipation of this regulatory framework. I mean, we've had a lot of follow-up, we've had a lot of, people, networks pursuing to get access to this framework so that it can even help them to also know how they are structuring their local networks and all of that. And so quickly, I'm going to share my screen on the framework, and it's quite a bulky document, so we may not be able to go through all of that, but I'll just look at some very important areas within the framework that we need to address our minds to as country networks. And so let me quickly share my screen. Okay, so I believe you can see my screen. All right, so this is the Africa Parliamentary Monitoring Organizations Network, and this is our regulatory framework. Of course, it's in drafts because this is actually the final version of it, but then it has to be approved by the Continental Mother Body or the Continental Executive Committee, right? And so yes, what we are seeing here is what we are most likely going to work with after the Continental Committee has approved it or has given the go-ahead for us to operationalize this. And
Can you please go slowly for us, since you are going a little fast?
Okay, I'll do that. So first, I want to, and I believe you can see my screen also. And
yes,
I want us to look at what our mandate is really. And for our mandate as a continental organization, you could see we have a couple of them, and there are a number of them, right? And all of these, you could group them really under 3 categories. So when it comes to us ensuring that we are educating citizens, we are empowering citizens, and we are ensuring that the public are armed to effectively participate in parliamentary work, right? Some of these mandates, some of our mandates helps to achieve that objective, right? And then also you have one that seeks to, so all that we seek to do is to work with parliamentarians to ensure that we are strengthening them, we are building their capacity, we are supporting Parliament to achieve what they want to do, right? To perform effectively their role of representation, oversight, and accountability. And so let me just read a few of them. So for instance, the first one is for us to promote access to Parliament by gathering information about their activities, functioning, and reorganizing them in ways that citizens may more easily understand to reuse, right? So I'm sure you can read them. And then finally, it also points to us working together as PMOs, as networks across Africa to monitor the work of Parliament, to put in place mechanisms that will ensure that we are promoting transparency, that will ensure that we are advocating for good policies of government and all of that. So all of these mandates, as you can see them aligned here, point to these areas. And I'm sure when we have access to them, we can delve into them more in detail. Now let's look at very important aspects of this this framework or this regulatory framework, the governance structure, right? So what is going to happen is that we are going to have these organs of the APMON, right? So there is going to be a General Assembly, there is going to be a Continental Executive Committee, there is going to be a secretariat, and there is going to be the various regional blocks, and also we would have the various country networks, right? So how are these going to operate? Now, the General Assembly is going to be the highest decision-making body for the network, for the APMON. And so what it means is that for all the decisions that the network is going to take, it will take the General Assembly to approve or disapprove before we can start implementing them. Of course, the framework also gives the opportunity or the authority to the Continental Committee to take certain decisions, right? But the foremost or the highest decision-making body remains the General Assembly. And so as part of our convening and all of that, there's going to be periodic or there's going to be annual conferences for us. There's going to be whether virtual or physical conferences that we are going to organize for the General Assembly. And it is at these conferences, it is at these meetings that Assembly members can now vote and can now decide on issues for the APMON to implement. And so you would see some of the functions of the General Assembly would be the fact that it will issue recommendations and resolutions with respect to issues of interest. It will also elect the chairperson of the APMON. It will also call for initiatives from the different continental executives and also the secretariats. It will also look at how we can, direct the Continental Executive Committee when it comes to making recommendations, when it comes to passing resolutions to ensure that we are effective in our operations. And so let me quickly move to the Continental Executive Committee, right? I'm trying to highlight the most important areas. At the appropriate time, we are going to come to each network, country network, to discuss the operationalization of these this framework. So don't worry, gradually we will get there. And so you'd have the Continental Executive Committee. The Continental Executive Committee, as I mentioned, is the apex authority of the APMON, right? Of course, it follows the General Assembly. And this apex authority or this executive committee would have a chairperson, right? It will have a chairperson, and it will have it will consist of the various steering committees of the regional blocks. So what we would have is that the APMON will now have representation from the various sub-regions that we have in Africa. So we are going to have a representative from Southern Africa. We are going to have a representative, or we have a representative. In fact, at the moment, we have a representative from the sub-regions, coming together as the working group, right? That is the APMON working group, right? At the moment, because we are yet to, approve this framework. And so, yes, there is a representative from West Africa. There is a representative from Southern Africa. There is a representative from Eastern Africa, right? And there is a representative from the media, right? In the case of the African Parliamentary Press Network, right? Which I'm sure some of us may be aware of, a coalition or a network of reporters or journalists working with Parliament. And then also we would have a representative from the Pan-African Parliament Civil Society Forum, which is the organ or body that works closely with the Pan-African Parliament, that coordinates CSOs activities or CSOs that want to work with the Pan-African Parliament. And so we're going to have a representative from that sector or that organ as well. And then finally, there is going to be Secretary General, there is going to be head of the APMON Secretariat, right? So the Secretary General in this sense is going to be the one who is heading the APMON Secretariat, right? And I think I've already mentioned some of the functions or the duties of the executive committee, which of course would include considering the applications that will come from the different PMO coalitions seeking the APMON country network membership. So those who want to join us as a network, whether from the country level, whether from the sub-regional level, or any other member who is interested in joining, the committee will review and approve where necessary. Again, the committee will be responsible to give reports, right, to brief us, to brief the General Assembly, to brief the network on what's going on, how we are implementing, how we are succeeding or we are not succeeding. And of course, it's going to be responsible for supervising the election of all the regional blocks, right? It's going to be supervising who will get to elect, who will get to be elected, or who will get to be representing which regional block. And then finally, I want to add that it's going to supervise the General Assembly decisions, right? So during each General Assembly, it is the executive committee that is going to supervise, that is going to moderate the meeting. I want us to quickly look at the regional blocks. I want us to look at the regional blocks. So as I indicated earlier, we would have 5 regional or sub-regional blocks, right? We would have Central Africa block, we will have the East Africa block, the North block, Southern and West Africa block, right? And so all of these blocks will congregate at the APMON level, the APMON representation or executive committee, right? So what it means is that if, for instance, you have the head of the steering committee of the West African bloc, the head of the West African bloc or the coordinator of the regional bloc will represent on the APMON executive committee. The same applies to all the other regional blocks. So let's quickly read this as I have highlighted. So it says membership of the regional blocks shall be made up PMOs duly recognized as members of the respective country networks under each block. Each regional block shall be led by a regional steering committee composed of the conveners of all country networks within the regional block. Right. So what it basically means is that there is going to be a steering committee for all the regional blocks. So each of the regional blocks, there is going to be a committee, and the head or the lead, the coordinator of the regional block will now represent on the APMON. Let me quickly look at the country networks. And I think this is the area where we may be most interested in, because this is where we are going to mostly operationalize on the ground. And so it's very necessary for us to go through a couple of them. And so when it comes to the country networks, the framework says the foundational organ of APMON are the networks of civil society parliamentary monitoring organizations established in all countries within the African Union. So once it's a network, it's a country network or organ coalition formed within the African Union, qualifies to be part of the network. But of course, it will go through the processes. Again, any NGO interested in citizen participation, transparency, and accountability of national and or sub-national parliaments are eligible to join their country network and be affiliated to APMON. I think this is very self-explanatory. Again, it says that each organization that joins a country network must be committed to the sustainability and strengthening of the network, and at all times abide by the statutes, the principles, the policies, and requirements of the APMON. Again, it says that each country network shall be led by a national steering committee selected from among member organizations of the country network. What it means is that for the country networks also, there is going to be a steering committee. So there is going to be a national steering committee that you select. And so after the selection of the steering committee, there is going to be a selection of a lead or a coordinator, right? And this coordinator will also be selected from amongst you, right? It will be the coordinator will be selected from amongst you to now coordinate. And it is this coordinator who will also represent on the regional, the sub-regional steering committee, right? So we also have the general membership of each
Can I come in a little?
network shall be determined, yes, India.
All right, so I'll say that we are far behind time. So if you can wrap this up for us, because as at the moment, we're
Hello,
supposed to be in our
Cynthia.
breakout sessions. Yes, please, can you hear me? I was saying that we should be mindful of the time because as at this time, you're supposed to be in our breakout session. And so if you can wrap this up for us, we would love that.
Okay, so let me quickly wrap up since also very important. Let me quickly wrap up, then we can have our discussion. So as part of the country networks also, I've indicated there's going to be a steering committee, and the steering committee is going to, there is going to be a convener and there's going to be a deputy convener of each country network, right? And all of these, there are spelled out procedures that you would follow within the framework, right? So after electing the convener, there's also going to be the deputy convener, right, of the network. And then each steering committee will have to meet at least a quarter in a year. The secretariat of the network will be hosted by the convener. So once an organization has been elected or has been chosen as the convener of the network, it means that that organization is going to host the secretariat of the country network, right? And getting or receiving support from the other organization that has been selected or elected as the deputy convener. And of course, as we all are aware, the steering committee will continuously ensure that the country network is functioning effectively and they are meeting their goals, they're achieving their targets and all of that. Of course, all of these things will come through discussions and of course organizing the country, the annual general meetings for members to, brief them on what's going on and all of that. So I think basically that is what counts for us, especially the country networks, as we may be operationalizing this framework. When you go down, you have membership, the conditions for membership, the processes you can apply to be members of the network, whether country or regional. There are conditions or there are conditions that once you are a member of the network, you need to abide, you need to comply with, right? So that when you default, there are also some sanctions for members, right? And you could see there are also forms of membership you can have, or you can be a provisional membership, which means that you are still in the process waiting to be approved or disapproved to be a member of the network. You would have full membership and you have associate membership. Associate members who are organizations who ordinarily may not be doing what we are doing, right? but are interested in supporting our cause, are interested in supporting the objectives of the network, which can be very strategic. So, Cynthia, that is briefly what I would highlight in this framework. As I said, it's a very lengthy document, and so we'll take the time to explain to every network for us to understand how we are going to operationalize this and to ensure that we are able to structure our country networks effectively. So thank you very much, Cynthia, and I'll be here for any questions.
All right, thank you very much, Ben, for that wonderful presentation. Yes, time will not permit us to go through the whole document, but I know that very soon it will be ready and we'll share that with everybody. So I think it is time for us to make our comments again on the regulatory framework. Other than that, I think we would rather have the breakout session now, and then we take all the questions together after the breakout session. So if I don't see any hands up for questions or comments, I think that would mean we are okay to join the breakout session. I still haven't seen any hands up for questions. Okay, so I take it that we are okay with the presentation that you made, or if there are any questions, you can type it in the chat box. Si vous avez des commentaires à faire ou bien des questions à poser, vous pouvez faire ça dans la boîte de commentaires. Ça, c'est tout en bas de l'écran. On va se diviser en groupe de 2. Ça sera, so that we'll be dividing ourselves into 2 groups, English and French. So I'll open the rooms for us. So if you have any questions, meanwhile, if you have any questions,
I can see someone stand up.
Okay, okay, please. Whoever has the hand, I can't really see it. Okay, Monsieur Togbe, can you ask, vous pouvez poser votre question, bien faire votre commentaire.
Merci beaucoup. Moi, c'est Monsieur Togbe Komlangi Roméo. Je suis le président de l'association Mission Cris d'enfants de Parliamentary, membre du collectif des associations contre l'impunité au Togo, représentant du Togo à ECOSOC de l'Union africaine. Merci pour votre présentation. Je pense que nous en avons besoin pour asseoir vraiment un réseau efficace dans nos pays respectifs face aux défis liés au Parlement ouvert. Maintenant, je pense que c'est des informations que nous venons d'avoir et que nous connaissions déjà. Maintenant, il faut que nous puissions rapidement les mettre en œuvre pour que le réseau puisse être effectivement mis en place. Maintenant, ma question elle est celle-ci. Vous avez dans les critères, par exemple, dit que nous devons avoir un même objectif. Ça, c'est en adhérant. Et maintenant, à l'étape avant d'adhérer, est-ce qu'on pose ces questions, ces conditions-là à la connaissance des membres avant d'adhérer au réseau, ou c'est une fois entré que nous devons nous conformer à ce genre de choses? Ça, c'est ma première question. Maintenant, par rapport au règlement intérieur, est-ce qu'il est possible à chaque État de domestiquer par rapport à l'architecture nationale? Parce que si nous prenons le cas de notre pays, le Togo, toutes les associations sont sous l'autorité du ministère de l'administration du territoire. Et à chaque fois qu'on veut créer un réseau, ils ont un canevas qu'ils imposent à chaque structure. Mais je constate ici que c'est un peu différent. Est-ce qu'on a cette possibilité-là de modifier un peu les choses? Voilà ma préoccupation pour le moment. Merci à tout un chacun.
Oui, hello. Yeah, hello. Unfortunately, but I think he mentioned the fact that we needed the regulatory framework to be ready for them to have their networks in shape ASAP. Yes, I had to chat with my colleague at the back, so sort of lost touch, sorry. So he can retake it if we have the time. So please tell him to retake the last part of his question, s'il vous plaît. Oui, est-ce que vous pouvez poser la dernière partie de votre question, s'il vous plaît? On n'a pas bien entendu ça.
OK, merci. Je dis dans le règlement intérieur ou les statuts que nous avons élaborés tout à l'heure, j'ai vu que chaque chapitre ou chaque antenne nationale doit pouvoir discuter de ce règlement intérieur. Maintenant, la mise en place de chaque réseau doit se conformer à la législation de son pays. Par exemple, nous, au Togo, les ONG ou les réseaux sont sous le tutelle du ministère de l'administration territoriale. Et ce ministère impose un canevas de rédaction des statuts et des règlements intérieurs. Ma question est de savoir, est-ce que nous avons cette opportunité de modifier, votre règlement intérieur que vous proposez là, à l'arrimer sur le modèle que le gouvernement togolais pourrait éventuellement nous imposer? Est-ce qu'on a cette latitude de l'adapter au contexte de chaque pays? Merci.
Hello. Since
Oui,
I'm
allô?
not sure the interpretation was ongoing.
Charles, did you get the question?
Allô, allô, allô?
So, all right, so then go ahead. Please, you can go ahead. But yeah.
C'est dans le sens que moi je voulais. La mis plusieurs fois. C'est pas ça ici.
Yes, we can hear you. I don't know.
Ça fait plusieurs fois il a la même. Non, ils ont enlevé.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Monsieur Kwesi. Yes, so I think it's a very good question. And so what this means is that, you know, after the final, after we have shared the documents with you, we understand and we appreciate that every country has different regulations. Every country may have different laws, right, governing NGOs, whether networks and all of that, whether formal networks or whether loose networks. We appreciate these differences, right? And so there is that opportunity, yes, for the local or country network to always modify their own regulations. But in all of these, it should still be in line with the ultimate regulations of the network, the steering committee, the continental framework, right? So it could be because the local regulation doesn't allow for some few, you know, clauses in the mother regulation. You may have the opportunity to tweak it, to modify it, to suit Togo's regulations, which of course is fairly in line with what we plan to do. So yes, it's possible for that to be done. That's what we are looking at doing, yes. Do we have any other questions so that we can wrap up? Cynthia, hello, Cynthia. Please, are there any other questions? Does anyone have any other questions you want to ask? Did we lose Cynthia?
Okay, please. I think I was actually listening on in the French, so I was talking, but yes. Est-ce qu'il y a autre question?
Oui, il y a d'autres questions.
Okay.
Bonsoir, Monsieur Ben.
Ok, d'accord.
Je suis Moza Kwasi, congolais de l'ONG ADCCI, mais qui est également membre de PMOs Côte d'Ivoire. Et donc, vous nous excusez parce qu'on a eu un petit délestage ici à Abidjan. Et donc, on était obligé d'attendre l'électricité, que l'électricité vienne avant qu'on se reconnecte. Donc, nous avons pris un peu en cours au niveau de la nomenclature, c'est-à-dire la statue sur la statut de l'organisation, c'est-à-dire les bureaux exécutifs et ainsi de suite. Comme monsieur l'autre vient de parler, il disait que dans chaque pays, il y a la législation qui impose ses règles et vous dit que voilà comment vous devez vous conformer en écrivant les statuts et règlements intérieurs. C'est vrai, en Côte d'Ivoire, il y a un modèle type qu'on nous donne, mais on essaie de s'adapter à ça, voilà, pour que l'administration mette son sceau sur la composition de l'organisation. Et donc, c'est une question récurrente ou bien une préoccupation récurrente qui affecte souvent les organisations. Or, nous savons que la nouvelle donne avec les partenaires au développement et que dans les organisations, il y a un conseil d'administration, une assemblée générale du conseil d'administration et puis les autres démembrements, un bureau exécutif, ainsi que, voilà, ainsi de suite. Et donc, voilà, c'est aussi ma préoccupation, c'est-à-dire comment faire pour adapter nos réalités à la réalité extérieure. Voilà, c'est ma préoccupation qui est là.
Hello. Yeah, I was listening to him instead. I guess you got that. Okay, so I think he wants, he took notice of the structure of the network, how everything is supposed to be. Yes, but how would they adapt this to their, so how would they adapt this in their own context? He just, yes, so that is what I got from the last person. But if you have any other questions, if anyone has any question in relation to what that was discussed today, please raise your hands up. Unfortunately, because of the time, we'll not be doing the breakout session. And so let's all make our submissions here. If you have any comments on the earlier presentation made in relation to how to build effective networks, you can make that. If you have any questions and you feel you'd rather send it in the chat box, please use the chat box to send your questions. Someone will read it for everyone to hear. Okay. Are there any hands up? But yeah, Ben, did you get that the last question? He wants to know how they would adapt to their context, their local context.
Yes, so I think as I said earlier, so there would be the discussion with each country network, right, on how to operationalize these regulations in our context, in your context, in your country context. And of course, in doing this, it will mean that we have to also consider the local regulations, the local laws, what does the local law says about partnerships or networks or coalitions or NGOs. So by considering these two documents or these two laws, they will know which can now suit or fit into the local context of each country, right? So that is the exercise that we'll be doing. And as I said, we'll be coming to each one of the country networks to discuss how you would operationalize the regulatory framework. So during these engagements, they are going to help you, they are going to support you, and then you are going to explain how you can operationalize that effectively. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I see Monsieur Karim Yao, his hands are up. Vous avez la parole, Monsieur Yao.
Ok, merci bien. J'espère que tout le monde m'entend bien. Alors, j'avais une question relative donc au premier module. On a parlé des réseaux et notamment le présentateur a bien présenté donc les nombreux défis qu'il faut relever lorsque on veut bâtir donc mettre en place un réseau qui puisse être solide et qui puisse permettre donc d'atteindre les objectifs. Et moi, je suis en Côte d'Ivoire, j'ai vu pas mal de problèmes au niveau des réseaux, des questions de leadership, où parfois le réseau est mis en place avec assez de personnes et le travail reste dans la main d'une poignée de personnes. Et quand le réseau commence, quand cette poignée de personnes-là arrive à positionner le réseau et à avoir des appuis financiers à gauche, à droite, c'est là les gens vont sortir de partout pour se présenter et il y a pas mal de trucs. Donc, je voulais savoir quel va être l'accompagnement ou on va dire l'appui donc du bureau régional pour nous aider, surtout au niveau de la Côte d'Ivoire, à relever tous ces défis-là et pour pouvoir aller de l'avant. Est-ce qu'il y a des mécanismes qui sont prévus voilà, pour nous aider en cela? Deuxième volet de ma question, vous avez dans la même présentation on a parlé des questions, comment on va résoudre les questions des conflits qui peuvent être en interne. Vraiment, moi je voulais que vous puissiez sur ce point-là véritablement nous éclairer pour qu'on puisse vraiment bien baliser les choses parce que les questions de conflit sont des véritables questions. Sans vouloir citer le nom du réseau, il y a un réseau en Côte d'Ivoire qui a connu de véritables problèmes dans ce sens-là. il y avait un ancien responsable, puis un nouveau responsable. Et quand l'ancien responsable a vu que le nouveau responsable avait positionné le réseau, avait eu des financements, la personne a créé une sorte de réseau parallèle et ça fait que le réseau a eu 2 têtes et ce n'était pas assez intéressant. Ils ont eu assez de difficultés. Et donc, comment donc vous allez nous aider pour qu'on puisse bien résoudre les questions des conflits en interne pour ne pas que nous en arrivons à des situations malencontreuses comme celles que je viens de décrire? Merci bien, c'était mes 2 préoccupations.
Merci aussi. Charles, were you able to explain that very well? All right, so just a summary. So he has noticed that, I mean, the challenges that you mentioned, and the most predominant one is internal conflicts in networks. And he's noticed that even in their own network, there was an instance whereby someone, I mean, there's also an instance where the work is left in the hands of just a few people to do. And that is mainly because of money. If there's no money, people are less motivated to work. And later, when there's money coming in, you see that the old people who were there and were not doing anything or had left, they rather come back and want to take the old position that they held. So how do they work, first of all, to resolve the internal conflicts, as well as make sure that everybody feels a part of the network? The work is not only left to some few people to do. Again, the money issue, how do they also work to get money for their networks? Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Cynthia, and thank you very much, Miss Yu. Yes, so you'll recall that in my presentations, after listing or explaining the challenges, I also shared how we can resolve those challenges by making some recommendations. And one of them, of course, is to build internal systems, internal mechanisms to resolve our conflicts, right? So we need to understand that we are coming from different organizations with different cultures, with different organization values and goals and all of that. So there is bound to be conflict, right? The interests, we have varied interests, we have varied expectations, and so there is definitely bound to be conflicts. And so we need to, right from the onset, build into our network systems and mechanisms that will tell us that, okay, if this happens, this is how we want to resolve it. If this happens, this is what we are going to do, right? These systems and mechanisms helps for everyone to have clarity on what's the way forward when there is any misunderstanding and all of that. And I understand the issue of some members, not being active from the onset, and when there is support, they coming in and all of that. Of course, it happens sometimes, and it's one of the challenges in building networks. And so, as I said again in my presentation, is that is the more reason why you need a dedicated secretariat or a dedicated convener in this case, who is going to, have their eyes 24/7 on the network, coordinating the network. And usually our advice is that you elect or you select a convener whose work covers Parliament or who works 100% or mostly with Parliament. In that sense, it means that even in their normal work, they are always going to, commit some time to whether monitoring Parliament or engaging Parliament and all of that. So when it happens like that, the work is not left undone, right? Of course, because there may not be funding, there may not be money to support our initiatives, we may not get the involvement as we want. But once we have a secretariat or we have a convener or deputy convener whose work is concentrating on working with Parliament or promoting open Parliament, then we are assured that always would have something ongoing, right? And that would help to keep the network very active. I hope that I'm able to answer the questions as you asked. Yeah.
All right, I think you have, except the monetary part, how can they get funding for their various networks?
Right. Yeah. So I think funding, just as individual organizations we do for our individual organizations, we need to look out for collaborators. We need to look out for partners. We need to look out for organizations who are working to support our local, our country networks, right? So that we can, implement the initiatives and the policies and the programs that we intend to implement to effect change, right? Or to promote open parliament. But of course, from our side also as Parliamentary Network Africa, we are also going to work closely with every single local network to ensure that we support you when it comes to resource mobilization, if it's capacity building, if it's training you need for raising resources and mobilizing resources. We are going to help you in all of this to ensure that together we can raise some resources to support your work in your country. So yes, that you can rest assured that we are going to help you with that.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't see any other hands up. I'd want us to bring the session to a close. But before we have the closing remarks from my executive director, I'd want all of us to take a group picture. And so if you can put on your videos, Ben, please do us the honors of taking us that group. Yes, we can just spare like some 5 minutes to do that. Est-ce que vous pouvez allumer votre vidéo? L'on prend une photo, s'il vous plaît, pas votre audio, plutôt que votre vidéo. Allumez votre.
Are we ready? 1, 2, 3.
Oui. Moi-même, oui, la plupart parmi eux n'ont pas allumé les vidéos. Ben, can you see if most of them have? I have not seen most of them.
Yes, I think we have enough to go. So
okay.
We can get ready to take picture.
Ça va?
Just a minute. Just a minute. All right, we can go ahead, Cynthia. Hello, Cynthia. You are muted.
All right, so now that we are done with our pictures, I would say that, in fact, I leave the platform for my boss to make the closing remarks. But even before he does, I would like to thank all of you for joining this meeting. So our executive director, please, you have the platform to speak.
I hope that you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Right. Let me, on behalf of the team at Parliamentary Network Africa, thank you all for attending today's session. We are happy that you were able to join us. At the start of this activity, we saw that there was great interest from the various networks, country networks and PMOs. And we had as many as over 100 participants registering to join. And participants are from 13 African countries. And I think that this is pretty impressive. And we thank you very much for making time to join us. We have heard the concerns that you have raised, especially in respect of the regulatory framework. I think that Ben had done a great job in taking us through networks and network formation, the challenges that comes with it, the prospects. We know that as local networks and local civil society organizations in your respective countries, you've been doing a lot of network building. And so these are not areas that are new to you, but we believe that these mutual learning will help us to be able to build on some areas. And just like Ben had indicated, the regulatory framework, which will be guiding the network going forward, will be distributed to the various country networks in English, in French, and in Portuguese once they are ready. We're hoping that in the coming month of April, this would be done. We know that the regulatory framework has been developed in such a way that it would broadly address all matters from the country level to the sub-regional level to the continental level. But we are also aware that there will be some peculiar issues at your respective country levels, which you will be required to develop further regulations for. And we totally agree to that. And you will notice that the regulatory framework has a way of addressing that. And so, like Ben had indicated to us, the African Parliamentary Monitoring Organizations Network would essentially be structured under 5 main, levels. At the various country levels will be the country networks, where all civil society organizations who are interested in our collective mandate can join the country network. But the country network will have its own leadership, and it is the members at the country network level who will select their leadership. We know that there will be a transitional period because in your respective countries, for many of you, you have already selected your leadership or there is a coordinating organization. So the framework is designed in such a way that will still allow some of this transitional period to take place until such a time when we can move into the next phase. Now, once we have all country networks established, leaders at the various country networks will form the regional blocks. So for many of the countries joining us, you are in West Africa, the various country conveners or country chairpersons will make up the West Africa block, so that at the West Africa level also we can be able to share experiences at that level. Then, of course, the West Africa leader together with the East Africa leader, together with the Central Africa leader, Southern Africa leader, and co, will meet together to make up the Continental Executive Committee. And of course, there will be the General Assembly where all of us as countries will be meeting to have conversations. But please remember that all of this will be supported by the Secretariat here at Parliamentary Network Africa, and we'll be more than happy to support you in different ways and forms going forward. Ben has spoken about how we are able to support in fundraising and resource mobilization. We'll be providing some technical assistance. The Secretariat will also be helping in conflict resolution and conflict management because we know that these things are meant to happen. So this is a long-term journey with you, and we are happy that you've been able to join us today to kick off in this journey. We know that for some of you, you're already handling sub-grants. We are seeing the exciting work that you are doing. And on behalf of PN Africa, I want to thank you for the great work you are doing on parliamentary openness in your respective countries. We look forward to seeing you in subsequent capacity building workshops and continuing to share with you virtually, physically, and what have you. And so thank you all for joining, and thank you to the PN Africa team for putting this together. Merci beaucoup.
Merci. Thank you very much to our Executive Director, and thank you all for making a time to join this discussion. I would say that this is just one of a series of trainings that we'll be organizing. And whenever we call you to join, please join us for this training, because this is supposed to be a learning experience for all of us. So yeah, thank you very much and have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Merci. Au revoir.
Au revoir tout le monde et merci. On se verra.